Podcast. I'm Martha Lane Fox, and I have two jobs. I am President of the British Chambers of Commerce, and I am Chancellor of the Open University, which I think we can agree are two of the best jobs in the world. And I'm really pleased to have two fantastic women here with me today, colleagues from the British Chambers of Commerce, Shevaun Haviland and Jane Gratton. Thank you for coming. I'm going to come back and ask you to tell us a bit more about what you do in a second. But we're looking at skills in the UK in this podcast, based on the OU's recent Business Barometer. Anyway, first, Shevaun, tell me a bit about your amazing job, because I think you have next best job after me.
So I am the Director General of the British Chambers of Commerce.
That sounds very grand. Do you have a
Well,
robe?
As someone said, wow, you're a director and a general. I was like, yeah, that's really cool. I'm all in for robes if anyone's offering.
Okay, fine.
Yes, and jewels.
Listeners, take note.
So we represent the 53 chambers of the UK, which have 60,000 and counting businesses as their members, and the jewel in our crown, 79 and counting British chambers around the world. So really, really impressive global network. And our job is to make sure that the UK is the best place to start, grow and invest in a business.
And Jane, how do you help this work, which I know you do very deeply? And I also know you're a Kung Fu expert. You don't just bring Kung Fu skills to the British Chambers.
Yeah, so I'm a director in the policy unit at the British Chambers, but for the last 7 years or so, I've majored on employment and skills issues. So this is talking to businesses about their skills needs and talking to government about what they can do to help businesses fill those jobs.
So we all work together on the British Business Council that we established last year at the British Chambers to bring businesses together to talk about the big issues that face them. Shevaun, what's the work that we've been doing in that, and why is it important?
Yes, indeed. So last summer, together we launched the Business Council to oversee the Future of the Economy initiative. So we believe that the UK needs a long-term economic strategy, and this is us working with our business partners from all over the country to try and develop that. And it has 5 main work streams developed together with our businesses. So firstly, green innovation. So how are we getting our nation to net zero, but how are we innovating in green products and services? Second is global Britain, Britain's place in the world's place in the UK. Local economies of the future, our places, our high streets, how we ensure they are thriving. Digital revolution, of course, AI, how we are capturing the upsides, but how we are guarding against the downsides. And then the thing we're talking about today, people and work and people's skills journey through life.
But arguably, and presumably, Jane, you would agree with this too, as you're a skills expert, skills are through all of that, right? When we launched the green innovation work and transition to net zero, we've got a huge opportunity around green jobs in this country if we can find people to do them, just as we need people to fill AI jobs, then quantum jobs and all the other things coming down the track. So how do you see all the bits linking together?
Yeah, well, people are the most important part of any business. People run businesses and we need people to deliver the outputs.
Not robots yet, not quite.
Well, absolutely not. But the world of skills is changing really quickly. We have more automated workforce, more digital workforce, net zero imperatives to meet. And so we are on a journey, I think, where everyone is going to have to upskill and reskill continuously. But, the need for skills, it runs all the way through those 5 reports that Shevaun mentioned.
One of the things we've covered in the podcast is quite specific examples of businesses working with businesses to help with their skills, or just how local areas are approaching businesses. But I think the strength of the Chamber Network is we see this kind of at a macro level, don't we? So what are some of the things you're hearing about skills and people, Shevaun, when you travel around? Put your flat hat, your hard hat and your flat jacket on and talk to businesses.
I do have the great privilege of travelling the country and meeting businesses from all over. My geography of the UK is second to none now, and my use of British Rail. Which is fantastic, and you really hear it, firsthand. And honestly, the number one thing, except maybe in the energy crisis, the number one thing that businesses tell us is they can't get enough people, and they can't get people with the right skills. And when you can't get people for your business, because as Jane said, businesses are people, it means you can't grow, you can't take on new contracts, you can't expand your business, you can't develop new product. And actually it also means that the people that you do have are under more strain because they're sort of filling in for the gaps that you're carrying. So, as an economy, it is constraining us in terms of growth. So it absolutely is number one importance.
And why do you think why have we ended up here? Why has this happened? Because I think what I hadn't appreciated, I became president of British Chambers 18 months ago-ish, and I have always been in tech, sort of. So tech has always got a skills crisis because you're always inventing something new and you can never quite have enough people to do it. I don't think I had appreciated that is true across so many sectors and regions of the economy. How have we ended up here?
Yeah, well, you're right. Skills shortages are pervasive, but in the last few years, a number of things have happened and come together to really exacerbate the problem. So we've had Brexit, massive economic shock, but that's curtailed the pipeline of global talent considerably for businesses. So it's much more difficult to recruit for vacancies now. I think on top of that, we had the pandemic. People left their jobs, they changed their working patterns, and a number of people, unfortunately, have not returned to the workforce. So we have
a lot of women as well.
a lot of women, absolutely. And then on top of that, we've got, the changing nature of the workforce, as we said, with the different industry trends driving change. And then we've got this aging workforce. Lots of employers saying to us, I'm really worried that I'm going to lose the skills I've got now with no talent pipeline to replace them.
Yeah, and something actually I've touched on with a couple of people we've been talking to is this idea about then the changing nature of how long you will work and what that means for your careers. I think I've got 7-year-old children and there's no question in my mind they'll be working till 100 probably. And that's something I don't think we've kind of internalized in our economy, have we? Yeah. It's so many different factors. So what have you seen that works? Shevaun, give us some hope. You're good at hope. What have you seen that works where businesses are cracking this problem?
So what I like to say to audiences sometimes is, I'm going to test it on you, Martha, because I already tested it on Jane. After you leave education, what are the two main things you do in life? Go on, the two things you do. What do you do?
Well, you work.
You work, yeah, that's one.
And you hang out with people you're not at work with, your family,
right.
I guess. Yeah.
So one, you work, and two, it's all about relationships, friends, family, partners, whatever that may be. So those two things. How much do you learn about those two things in school?
Oh, so little.
Yeah. So our education British education is second to none in the world in lots of different ways. But we are not bringing the world of work into our schools, into our education settings. So we have a great shortage of careers advice capacity in most schools. We probably have, I would say, a lack of systemic engagement between workplaces and educational settings. And we were moving in the right direction with new T-levels, vocational training, apprenticeships, and so on. But the other thing is, it's cultural, isn't it? So we sort of think, we leave school or we leave university at 18, 21, whatever it may be. Job done. We don't need to go back to that again. And actually, I'm probably, maybe our, generation behind us, really it's the first time that the world has changed. So my dad worked for the same company for 30 years. We won't do that, and the kids behind us won't do that. So we actually have to change our culture to think about this lifelong learning piece. How can I change and adapt and as I go through my career? So, when we see this all the time, around the country, we see great examples of businesses going into schools, of businesses having young people come into their workplace, of businesses, thinking about the pathways for their people and what they might want to learn on the way. And of course, Open University do that, in spades. So we do see great examples of it, but yet it's not enough. It's not ingrained in our system yet.
Do you have anything to add from a kind of policy perspective, Jane?
Well, lots of employers are saying to us, help me to fill my skills gaps. I can't recruit successfully now. I'm not getting the candidates for the roles. There's a skills mismatch. So what can I do myself? And, what we're saying is the in-work progression, the in-work training is really critically important. So we're going to see, much more emphasis, I think, on lifelong learning. And the short modular courses, apprenticeships are brilliant, employers tell us. Employers love them,
We do.
but they're not the solution to every problem. And where we need to get people upskilled, retrained, reskilled really quickly for an opportunity that the business has and a progression opportunity that the individual has, we've got to have that agility in the system. The micro-credentials, the short, modular, accredited courses that help people on their journey. So I think that's going to be particularly important. But I think the other thing that we need to do is have much more of an understanding between employers and the education system on what those skills are, when they're going to be needed, and make sure that the job opportunities that employers are creating are aligned with the training provision and the careers advice and education that young people are getting, so that people are moving into those jobs seamlessly, really, and employers don't have these skill shortages.
One of the things that I've heard a couple of times, both when talking to people for this podcast, but also when I've been travelling about, is the success of the local skills improvement plans. And I know the British Chambers is very active in those. Can you explain what they are and how they work and how we could make them even more powerful?
So local skills improvement plans, there are 38 across England. Chambers of Commerce are running 32 of them. And these are really brilliant ideas.
That's why they're working so well, of course.
Indeed, of course. The brilliant idea of helping employers, many of whom have not really been involved in a skills conversation before, to come around the table and
Can you
say...
give us a more specific example so people can kind of picture who the business might be that might do that and how they're working?
Okay, so it might be a small manufacturing business or a marketing agency really struggling to fill their job vacancies. And they come into the local skills improvement plan that the system that the Chamber is convening and talking to providers about, these are the jobs that I'm creating. This is where my industry is moving to. These are the skills I need in my business. What training is available now? And if there isn't the training available, helping those local skills providers or national skills providers to shape the curriculum so that it is meeting those skills needs. Those skills needs. And I was saying, then linking back into people coming through the education system so that they are aware of the opportunities and taking the right decisions in their things, the choices that they are making at that level. So it's about aligning everything at the local level. We're a year in. Already it's making a massive difference.
How are you judging that? How?
So we did a piece of research recently, an evaluation report that was independent of the Chamber networks, a fresh pair of eyes looking in and asking, so what? Yeah. 12 months in, so what? We've got employers engaged for the first time, more employees, over 65,500 businesses coming to the table, which is not insignificant. It's a big number.
Many of whom have never been asked this question.
Never been asked before.
Yeah,
that's very surprising, isn't it?
So they're coming to the table. They are now working with providers, knocking on the door of providers and saying, can you help me? So we're creating a market now for providers. And then providers are saying, I've never had this granular level of detail before. It's really helping me to plan what provision that I need to make. So already in a very short space of time, we are seeing, the beginning of that transformation that's going to help to solve the skills shortages. What we need is longer term planning, of course, longer term funding, because it's going to take quite a while, I think, to get it to a system where everything is working as well as it can be.
Because you have to move these systems, don't you? So, in an area as a sixth form college, for example, you were teaching X and now you found out that the world's moved on and you need to teach Y, right? And that is, that academia doesn't move. You've got to build a curriculum. You need the tools for it. Just on a Monday, I was in Coventry at the Manufacturing Training Centre, where what we're seeing apprentices train on incredible bits of kit of how to do, metal cutting and really sophisticated electronics. But you need that kit, and that takes a while and you need the people to teach it. One of the colleges I saw a while ago, locally they need more people who understand plumbing.
Yeah.
And they're paying quite a lot for people to teach plumbing, but it's not as much as you earn if you're a plumber. And of course, teaching's not for everybody. It's quite intimidating as an idea to a lot of, even though they're obviously experts in their field. So, but bringing together businesses to talk to educators about what they need. I mean, we've just seen even just having those conversations has moved things on, hasn't it? Because they talk in different languages too. So, educators talk about skills, businesses talk about jobs, job descriptions, that sort of thing. Yeah. And there's a whole other area that was really uncovered, which is actually more about the softer side of work readiness, getting young people just ready.
That's come up a few times. What do you
go into a business, factory, office, whatever it may be, and the sort of confidence, communication, critical thinking type skills that are there. They're there in those young people. They just need to be brought out.
Yes, and I feel very lucky that I was given quite specific tasks and actions around that when I first started working. But that is not the case for many people, is it? And you have to, as an employer, spend time and investment, and it might not always be a priority to do those things. Shevaun, you are constantly on speed dial with delete as appropriate, the Chancellor, the Shadow Chancellor, the PM, all the private secretaries, the different people in the civil service. Are people listening? What happens when you make this case? Do you think this is understood politically, I would say, crisis that we face with skills, and the numbers bear that out? Our research, the OU's research. What's the political landscape against all of this?
Yeah, I think absolutely all parties are listening. And because it's not just me who says it, right? It is like every business they meet. And of course, they recognise that it's holding back our growth as an economy. There's a lot of good stuff going on. There is a lot of good stuff going on. And as we referenced apprenticeships earlier, there's been moves in it to ensure the levy's working, bringing in T-levels, etc. Careers and Enterprise Company. So there's a lot of good stuff going on. We need to keep moving, like LSIPs, moving down that path. But what we would say is the challenge that we have is because we don't have a national, I call it what you like, long-term economic plan, industrial strategy, whatever you want to label it, a plan for the UK economy, because dropping out of that, of course, will be a skills plan. Yes. So if you know where your economy's going, you know what skills you need to drive it in that direction. And without that, we're a little bit, it's a little bit fragmented still in places. So that's what we'd like to see more of. And then, everyone's heading in the same direction. And you've got to balance us training our people, ensuring people who are not in work, if they're out on long-term sick, I can help back into the workforce. If people need childcare, for example, you've seen some changes from this government recently. There's more to do in terms of just capacity and our immigration system. So an immigration system that's fit for the purposes of our economy. Yeah.
So I'm going to wave a magic wand for you both. You'd both be spectacular prime ministers. I'm just interested to know, this could be an opportunity to launch any bids you might be interested in heading out there to the public. But if you were really only allowed one wish in policy terms around this agenda, what would you both pick? What do you think would make the biggest difference?
I would pick the ability for every child at school to go into a workplace like at least a couple of times in their time in school, because without seeing it and experiencing it, it's really hard to understand. It may well be that your parents are like, one's a teacher and one's a nurse, right? So how would you have any idea what it looked like to run lastminute.com or run a chamber?
I had no idea what that looked like, just to be clear.
Or work in a factory. You wouldn't, and that's totally normal. And vice versa. Both your parents are business people. You've never been in a hospital setting as an employee. So I think that would really drive understanding.
And you, Jen, you want to add one too?
So the future talent pipeline is, of course, really important. But actually, 80% of your future workforce is in work now. Yeah. So we need to do a lot more about upskilling and reskilling, but getting some of people who aren't working because they're facing different barriers for all sorts of reasons back into work where they can contribute, and they can have better fulfillment because they're seeing in work progression as well. So it's about how you bring people back into work and how you progress them in work.
Am I allowed one? I'm going to answer my own question. That's terrible, isn't it? As a
Well, you're
host?
allowed because you're in charge. So
Yeah, that's
you're
it.
like,
That's
yeah.
it. Presidential chancellor, whatever, special dispensation. I think I would have to put digital at the heart of this stuff because I feel, again, I know I'm slightly brainwashed, but that is going to be such an important future plank of the economy and of any business. Doesn't matter if you're a digital business or not,
Yeah.
you've got to operate in a digital environment. And I do think it kind of levels the playing field if you do it well. So ensuring that we've got amazing connectivity and the right content to help people who may be displaced from a job over here because the industry changed, or maybe trying to get into a new industry or make a pivot or never been in work. I do think we could be much more imaginative in how we use digital technology.
Yeah.
That's another one. Just to make it a bit more personal, how do you guys keep skilled up and relevant? Because I think it is a real challenge for people working to be in this lifelong learning cycle. Shevaun, how do you think about it in terms of people that work in the British Chambers and our members and as an organisation internally? And then how do you think about it for you personally?
Yeah, I mean, so in work, we always think about our staff and their personal development and the balance between where we see a gap for the business and where they would personally like to develop. So we always ensure, like through the year, through our appraisal system, etc., that that people are getting, the development that they want and that we want, and so I think it works quite well. And then with yourself, it is something it probably gets left, doesn't it? Really low down your list, really, and especially when you get later on in your career. So I've been recently thinking about, for this role, I have to do, for example, a lot of public speaking. So how can I get better at that? What are the things I can change myself to do it? And then the other thing, back to your point, is we talk a lot to our business about using AIs, new phenomenal changes we're seeing there. It's really exciting for small and medium-sized businesses. I mean, you can just change your productivity overnight.
Yep.
So I need to make sure I'm reading about what the new things are. I'm having a go on ChatGPT and asking it stupid questions and seeing what happens. So the tools that are out there that we're sort of keeping ahead reading wise, and so a bit of that as well.
Yeah. How about you, Jane? Beyond Kung Fu. At a very high level, we should add.
So I guess the nature of my role means that I'm learning all the time because we're at the forefront of policy. We're helping to shape policy. So we're constantly reading, talking to people, understanding. But at a personal level, I really like these bite-sized bits of learning, particularly on the IT side because it's moving on so quickly. Yeah. So we've got a really neat system at the BCC where we can just do a short course when we're ready online. So I like to balance sort of reading around the subject with some sort of technical skills that I can get in a really fast, neat way.
Yeah, well, that's obviously, again, have to make sure I give Open University full credit at this, because the Open University, at its core, is this notion that anybody can learn at any moment in their career. And going to do a degree ceremony in the Barbican on Friday, and they're big ceremonies at the Barbican. It's always a lot of fun. I always try and encourage them to make as much noise as possible. But the main reason that it's so incredible is because you can see when people come across the stage at you that they're just desperately embarrassed and they want to get off the stage as quickly as possible. And please don't make me do this. This is worse than having to study for 5 years. Or they want to tell you the story that they've brought to this moment, and they're always moving, and I'm always crying, and all the team are always like, come on, get a move on. I'm like, they're sobbing on the stage. People who in caring responsibilities and working and doing something else, people who've been a social worker for 14 years and then decided that they want to go into child psychology and train to do that while working and looking after something. It's a lot of amazing stories. So I always feel super optimistic actually after that we've got incredible capacity, both at an individual level and then at a national level, to do what we're talking about. We just got to keep pushing on to encourage people to do it.
Yeah,
So,
it is. It's about planning for skills, isn't it? Planning nationally, as Shevaun said, we need this strategy, this economic strategy. We need planning locally as local regions through the LSIPs, but we also need to help businesses plan for their own skills. So planning at those three levels, then you can start to mobilise the resources to get those skills in place. So the planning bit is really important, I think.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So it's 2030. We may or may not have had some changes of government, various shapes and forms by 2030. Let's take politics out of it. What would you love to see happening in Britain, and what do you think we can be shooting for? We don't maybe have the economic industrial strategy, whatever you want to call it, that you would really love, Shevaun, right now. But when you think about it, where are we as a country in 2030?
So I would like to be able to say that. So I'm off to Stoke tonight. Yeah,
Nice.
got an event tomorrow at Port Vale Football Club.
Brilliant.
Some fantastic businesses in Staffordshire, in the city. I would like to say that I was going to visit a business, and they said, I have no shortage of amazing people from this place coming into my business, work ready, understanding how it all fits together, who just, are off. And it has grown my business 30% in the last, 6 years.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like. That's the outcome we'd like to hear.
I like the way you said about the local nature of that. We talked to Alwyn from Wales in this series, and she was talking about what they're doing in Wales to build that capacity locally, and that is really fundamental, isn't it? We don't want to become too parochial and too kind of insular, but you also want to make sure that local areas are really thriving.
Yeah, and people don't want their young people to go away to university and not come back, right?
Yeah.
Or come back in like 30 years' time when they've had kids. So they do. They want them to stay local and work locally. You understand local needs, and yeah, absolutely.
And how about you, 2030?
I think what would be great is in 2030, young people are coming out of school with understanding their transferable skills and having the really good basic skills in place, with this love of learning, with a real passion to keep learning rather than thinking it finishes when you leave school or college or university, and that they can find that training and they can move seamlessly between sectors, and that, this idea of employers being able to not always look for a perfect match at recruitment, but to be flexing recruitment as well and saying, you've got those transferable skills, you've got some really great experience, I can employ you and I can develop you on the job. So for me, it's this idea, much more agile system of learning, and some real sort of passion for learning from people who are coming through the education system and people in work as well.
Okay, so anybody listening in positions of extreme power, we've got our wish list. Let's make it happen. Just because this is the last one of our series, and because we've got only just a couple of minutes left, I'm going to ask you something completely ridiculous. New skills that you would both love to have. I'm not talking about just like personal development and things you need to get better at work. I'll start and be very honest. I am a terrible cook. Literally, people run away from me when they think I might be providing some food for them. So I would like to learn to cook better. But more importantly, for my business life, I'd like to be able to speak a language really well, because I think we're terrible at speaking languages in this country. And I think it helps in terms of cultural and, expansion and general, just, sophistication and usefulness. So that's me. Jane, how about you?
Okay.
What skills?
Well, I'm less than 5 foot tall. I'm quite petite.
Didn't notice.
And it's very difficult for me to get a choice of fashion clothes that I like to see. So what I'd really like to do is to learn to sew.
Make your own
Make
clothes.
my own clothes.
That's a good
what
one.
Yeah,
I feel that's
what I'd really
achievable.
like to do.
My cooking definitely not, but you make it close 100%. Shevaun, you're perfect, of course.
Obviously. I'm also a terrible cook, but I've no interest in learning, and a terrible linguist. But I'd love to be great at singing.
Oh,
Apparently, I don't know really if this is true, but some people say that my voice is terrible. I don't really agree with them. But even if it is, I'd love to be able to sing.
well, I don't want to give a personal plug, but you may or may not be aware that the country's premier karaoke business, Lucky Voice, is always open to you, Shevaun, if you need to go and practice in private, in a padded room.
On my own, apparently, yes, so no one else can hear it.
Exactly. All right, well, thank you both so much. It's a great pleasure to work with you both, but also to be able to talk about this topic. We've had a great time talking to so many thought leaders in this series. So all that's left for me to do is to remind you that this is a podcast brought to you by the Open University and the British Chambers of Commerce. And we've been talking about the OU's Business Barometer. But I think we can agree that with all the people we've talked to over the series, we have got the answers. We just need to help them be executed. So thank you very much for listening. I'm Martha Lynn Fox.